Greensboro's Institute for Political Leadership is a nonprofit research and educational institution that assists aspiring politicians. Kelly McCullen recently sat down with the group's executive director to learn how they are grooming the state's future political leaders.
Robin Dorff is the executive director of the Institute of Political Leadership, now located at UNC-Greensboro. Mr. Dorff, thanks for being on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's jump right into what it is you're doing over there. Let's talk about nonpartisan political training. Honestly, how do you do nonpartisan or multi-partisan training when everybody running for office seems to be quite partisan?
That's the real key to it, is that we're not trying to make people nonpartisan. We want good Democrats and good Republicans and good Libertarians and good Independents together in a class at the same time, and then take them through a program that really is about both training for how to run for office, as we say, the right way, and also a lot about how to run the office the right way if they are elected. And as a consequence, what you have then are people learning from each other, but also developing some understanding for the fact that just because you belong to a different party and have a different political philosophy doesn't mean we can't agree to disagree and we can't talk about the problems that people have that we're ultimately there to address.
In handpicking your candidates, do you find that people tend to fall into politics because some reason made them politically active, or do we have people out there from a young age plotting to be politicians?
There are different categories of individuals. Some have kind of an epiphany, a moment politically where there is a cause, something that they really believe in and they don't think it's being fairly represented, and that stimulates them to become active. Others do kind of fall into that other class where from a very young age they know they want to be actively involved in politics, they want to be political leaders, and they've been at it probably since they first ran for office in, who knows, 4th or 5th grade.
So I want to run for office, or I want to be some sort of elected leader. How do I successfully prepare to be either a candidate or a politician?
Well, there are a number of keys to it. Our program certainly isn't the only answer. We generally get people who are fairly far along in that process. They have served in other ways, and they may be moving into a real serious campaign for the first time. But one of the keys to being involved in politics is simply being involved in community affairs, different organizations. That includes clubs, but civic organizations. So there are lots of steps along the way. Most of them all involve interacting with and dealing with other people.
I was going to ask you about that. A good point, because so many people out there in North Carolina, around America, say, these politicians don't know what I'm going through every day. So how do you find them if they're socially engaged, yet a little skepticism out there from the voters who put them in office at the end of the day?
There is, and that's one of the issues we wrestle with a lot in IOPL, because it takes a very, very committed individual to spend the time that it takes both to run for office and then run the office. It comes at great cost sometimes to families and free time and so on. But ultimately, if you don't stay connected to those people that elected you and the ones that you are responsibly there to represent, you get the kind of alienation and the feelings that you're alluding to. And we have a great deal of that now, and I think some of it personally comes from people who, as elected officials, think they're too busy to spend that time really connecting and staying connected with the people that they're there to represent.
Is that one of your lessons of the Institute?
It is absolutely a key lesson, if you couldn't tell.
Well, let's talk about it. Once you've got the courses outlined that you want candidates to soak in if they make it into your program, how do you pick the right person, the right potential candidate?
Well, there are a number of things, and when we get a large pool of applicants, as we often do, we have a number of criteria that we're looking for to build each class of about 20. One, we want to balance across the party line, so we don't want all Democrats and all Republicans. An ideal mix out of 20 would be, let's say, 8 Republicans, 8 Democrats, a couple of Libertarians, and a couple of Independents. So we're looking for that balance. We're also trying to make sure we represent the diversity of North Carolina. So we're looking for people from different regions of the state. We're also looking for men and women. We're also looking for racial and ethnic diversity. So in the end, the 20 that get selected for each class may not necessarily mean that others who didn't select it weren't as qualified. They may come in that next round when we're rebalancing again. So a lot of those things go into getting that mix right, just to make this point, because we want them learning from each other as well as from the experts to present to them and get them engaged then in dialogue with those experts, but also with each other.
Now, when you and your team go through those applications, do you need friends with pull to be taken seriously as a candidate for the
I don't believe so, although recommendations certainly help, because the single most important factor that we're looking for is people who are really committed to taking that plunge, to actually running for office. So if you have, let's say, two people who look who are equally qualified and equally recommended by people, but one seems to stand out in terms of their commitment. I'm already signed up to run in the next cycle for my city council, my school board, and so on. That person's going to have a little bit of an edge.
Now, your institute, I checked out the mission statement on the website. You train the potential candidates on current policy matters.
That's... Yes.
I would think you would already need to know the policy matters before you decide to run for office.
Well, the difference, and that's what I was going to qualify, is we discuss current policy matters, but we specifically as IOPL do not advocate positions on them. What we want to do is to have some of those discussions of policy matters in this group that is, as I said, very diverse in all of those ways I was just talking about. So there are some very serious policy discussions, but our role is not really to educate them on the policy per se. It is to get them more experience at having those kinds of policy discussions in a multi-partisan context.
Now, take yourself out of this in your institute. When the person comes in for your training, how much should they know about current policy matters? Does a local candidate need to know about state issues and national issues and vice versa?
No. I think that it always helps if you've got a broader perspective to cast or to frame your issues in. So for a local candidate knowing something about the broader national context, clearly that's important. But we expect our candidates to be very much focused on what it is that they want to be, and that is who do they want to represent in what context. And that's very different if you're going to be running for a North Carolina U.S. congressional seat as opposed to running for a school board or a small town council or a county commissioner's board.
Your institute also teaches on ethics, right from wrong. So many non-politicians think that's easy. Is it easy to distinguish right from wrong when you're in a political office?
I try to make the point, and the people that come in and present to our fellows during the program, and we have this discussion over and over again, is that actually when it comes to matters of ethics, the purely right and the purely wrong are not the most difficult ones. The gray area is where it's really tough. And the point we try to get across there is that it really has to be less a matter of what's legal and illegal, what's right and what's wrong, than a matter of what does my own moral, ethical compass tell me is the right thing to do. And as one lobbyist, very well-known lobbyist and a very good one here in North Carolina, once said, if you have to ask yourself the question, you probably already know the answer. And that's the point we try to get across to our fellows.
Robin Dorff is the Executive Director of the Institute of Political Leadership at UNC-Greensboro. Mr. Dorff, thanks for coming on North Carolina Now this evening.
It's a pleasure. Thanks again for having me.